Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another video here on the Fellow KGB channel. My name is Kyle, and we're going to be going over the Week 12 waiver wire targets today. We're going to hop into a screen share right away, and then I'll show you guys my ESPN watch list. We got 30 players on there, but before we get to that, I did want to just say, looking at the weekly grid schedule here, the Lakers do play 5 games this week, so I just wanted to start off the show by showing you guys some potential Lakers that need to be added. Now, the guy that's probably the hottest ad right now is Kyle Kuzma. He's averaging 42.5 points over the last 7 games or last 7 days. And I'm trying to see here. He's probable for tonight, so you could probably snag him yet. If actually the game's just tipped, so I don't know if you'll be able to sign him, but at least 4 more games after tonight. So go ahead and get your Lakers, Montrezl Harrell, LeBron James, of course, probably owned. Same with Dennis Schroeder, but Markieff Morris would probably be the next guy that I like. Maybe Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but for sure Kyle Kuzma is going to be on my 30-player watch list. So we'll move into that now. But we'll kind of review this, every week going forward with teams that have the most games. But for the majority, you're going to get 4 games for most teams here. And then I'm not as excited to get these guys with 3 games, maybe if you just add them for a night or so. But anyways, looking at the player watch list, we're going to filter it here by percent rostered, and then I'll also show the last 7 days stats here. So here we go, the first person on the list, and he's been gaining a lot of ownership lately. He's almost up 50% in the last 7 days. This is Kevin Porter Jr. He's 62.7% rostered. I probably should have put out a video on him as soon as he played his first game, but for the Rockets here, we know John Wall has been out. I think Oladipo too. There might have been another guy out as well. But all of a sudden, Kevin Porter Jr. gets called up from the G League, and he's just been balling. You see 40.25, 47.25, and then 19.5. That's probably his floor going forward. So really nice numbers here. He's pitching in numbers on the defensive side, steals and blocks. So I like what I see from Kevin Porter Jr. And it's the Rockets. Like, they don't have much to go for the rest of the season, so they're going to continue to try and play some of these younger players and give Kevin Porter Jr. a chance. So he's probably owned, but in a 12-man, 10-man league, I think he needs to be owned the rest of the way. I'm going to throw these names out here. I have a list of guys here that are over 50% owned. If you're in a 10 or 12-man league, that's where I would consider adding these guys, and that's going to be Josh Richardson, Dante DiVincenzo, Ricky Rubio, Kevin Huerter, Brooke Lopez, Terrence Ross, and then you got Seth Curry here. I'll add in Carmelo Anthony and Kyle Kuzma. We talked about Kuzma at the top of the show. But anyways, these guys are all averaging over 28 fantasy points per game over the last 7 days. Terrence Ross just has 1 game in there, about 37 points. But all really solid ads. If they're available in a 12-man league, I would love getting one of these guys. These guys are all long-term holds as well. So these guys can help you the rest of the season here. Let's just keep it moving. Carmelo Anthony's playing some good ball right now. But Kuzma is probably the most attractive one right now, because we saw that Anthony Davis is out for at least 2 or 3 more weeks. I think that was the news blurb that I saw today. So who's next on the list? We've got Goran Dragic, Danilo Galinari, Ruri Achamura, Wendell Carter Jr. Now, these guys are all over 40% owned, in between 40 and 50. We look at Dragic's numbers real quick. Over the last handful of games here, he's starting to consistent minutes. That's what I value probably more than anything, is he's going to be on the court when he's healthy quite a bit here. Not the greatest game last night against Orlando, but he still ends up with 23 points. He had 8 assists. So you have a nice range here of a floor of about maybe 17 to 20 points. And then he'll pop off one or two games per week here for you. So I like Dragic quite a bit, really dependable. You also have another veteran here, Danilo Galinari. Now it's a shame the Hawks have just been hit with injuries this year. We know Deandre Hunter's trying to make a comeback. Cam Reddish is out for a while with an Achilles. So there's a lot of shots to be had here with Gallinari, and he's been on a 4-game bender here. I don't know if I'll call it a bender, but his scoring has been, getting very consistent. So 20, 15, 20, and 23. That's, really nice fantasy numbers. You see almost 31, 25, 32, and 52. So Gallinari is probably one of my favorite ads right now. And he should be owned. He should be owned in pretty much any 10, 12-man league for sure. But he's only about 45% rostered. So check out him. Got Ruri Achamura here, who's been playing decent, but then he had this big 50.25 fantasy game against the Milwaukee Bucks. But other than that, he had not been playing very well. So I like Ruri. I want to see some more consistency out of him. They just tipped off in Milwaukee again right now. So we'll see if he can start to, maybe this is a new trend here, but the 38-minute spike, 29 points, 11 rebounds, we'll see if he can get things back in the right direction and kind of get to where he was playing at the end of February, which was a solid performer. So keep an eye on Ruri Achamura. Then you get Wendell Carter Jr. here, who's got a really nice floor. He had a couple bad games at the, in the end of February, early March, but he's starting to, settle in nicely here. A nice floor of 19 to 23 points. Some, usually most nights somewhere in the 30s, maybe some 40s on a weekly basis. The minutes have been weird though. That's what I don't like, is 19, 22, 15. He came off the bench yesterday, so I'm not sure how I feel about it, but he's definitely a guy that should be owned. He's a really good player, really a young ascending player still, so he should be rewarded with more minutes as the season goes on. Let's keep it moving though. These guys are both 35% owned. You got Gary Trent Jr. and Will Barton. Now, I like Gary Trent Jr., but I'm also nervous about CJ McCollum coming back soon. But Gary Trent Jr. has been playing very, very well while McCollum has been out. He had a really good month of February, and he's continuing that after the All-Star break here. So you see really good, consistent, some 34, 35 minutes per game, really consistent scoring. You see all the double figures here. Only one game that's not in double figures here on the sheet. Not a huge contributor in rebounds, assists, but the steals kind of come in bunches. So that's kind of nice. So I like Gary Trent Jr. Maybe just as long as McCollum is out, I'll be interested in Gary Trent Jr. there. And then you got Will Barton here for Denver, and he's been playing really well lately. He missed some time in mid-February, kind of battled back with some minutes, and now he's, getting starter minutes again. So over 30 a game. You look at his last 7 days, though, compared to his season stats, basically 3.5 more minutes, 10 more points per game. The rebounds are down, assists about the same, steals are up, and then blocks, whatever, those are down just a little bit. But the scoring is what I'm very interested in. He's being a really nice fantasy player for us. 31, 34, 22, 34, 24, 31. So he needs to be owned. He's only 35% owned. So I would make sure Will Barton's not hanging around. Now, this is a guy here, Robert Williams. I'm super interested. There has been some rumors that maybe Tristan Thompson gets moved here. That opens up a lot more minutes for Robert Williams down the stretch. And again, we did see that Brad Stevens mentioned maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that he wants to get more Robert Williams minutes going forward. Now, what I like about Robert Williams is look at his minutes. 19, 17, 23, 22, 18, 22. And then look at his fantasy points. He's like almost doubling up his fantasy points with minutes, which is fantastic. So he's a high fantasy points per minute player. And if he gets more minutes, all of a sudden this is a guy that needs to be owned. He's only about 30% owned. And again, the narrative that I think is like a lot of rookies and second-year younger players, if they're on teams that have the opportunity to get them more actively, involved in the rotation as the season progresses, I think we could see more Robert Williams minutes down the stretch here. So I love him quite a bit. We'll move on here to, let me kind of just stretch my boxes out a little bit so I can get the full view. Royce O'Neil, a good veteran for Utah. He's a good player on a good team. Starter minutes, you love seeing that, upwards of 42 on some nights here, 36, 35, 37. So he gets some high minutes, and it's got a very safe high floor here. He's a guy you can just leave him in there. If this is your worst player, you're feeling pretty good, averaging about 22 points per game. Last 7 days, though, he's averaging about 25. So if this guy's available in your 12-man league, I think he needs to be owned. He's only under 23% owned. Next, you got Dwight Howard, and we know Joel Embiid is out for a little bit here. And Dwight Howard, I don't think he's going to ever be a big minutes guy, but if he starts seeing at least 20 minutes consistently, you're probably going to see him settle into this 25 to 30 fantasy points per game. And we know Joel Embiid's out for a while. They do start Tony Bradley as the starter, so maybe we'll pull up him. Maybe I'll just pull him up in a little bit here, but we'll look at the Sixers rotation in just a second. But I like Dwight Howard as long as Joel Embiid's going to be out. Next, you got Luguentz Dort here, and Dort he's been pretty consistent, throughout pretty much the whole season. And I don't know why he's still kind of low owned here, but 14.5% owned. In the last 7 days, he's averaging 24.6 fantasy points. You see the 27, the 21, the 33, really consistent minutes, basically playing better than he was. Look at his last 7 day stats compared to his season stats. Minutes are about the same. Points are up a little bit. Rebounds up a little bit. Assists up almost by 2. Steals and blocks, he needs to get some of those. But he's playing some good ball right now. I like Dort quite a bit. And again, young player on a young team. Don't expect much out of the Oklahoma City Thunder going forward. So we'll see him continue to get a lot of minutes. Another young player here for the Rockets, Kenyon Martin Jr. His last 7 days, he's been averaging 35.4 points. You see 3 big games in a row, 31, 29, 32 minutes. Really good scorer. He's a good contributor in the rebound category, and also on defense. You see the steals and the blocks, which is pretty nice for a small forward here. 36, 39, and 30 fantasy points. So this guy he's playing very, very well right now, and I think he needs to be owned pretty much in 10 or 12-man leagues. We know John Wall, Christian Wood, Eric Gordon, these guys, they might return soon, but until then, Kenyon Martin Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., these guys are going to get a lot of minutes going forward. You got Danny Green here, who he's not super exciting. He's got, kind of a low floor at times, but otherwise, for the most part, he's going to get you double digits. The last 3 games here, though, some pretty good moments, 26.75, 34, 25.5. So he's playing some good ball right now. We'll see if he can keep it together and keep going consistently, but not a player I love. I'd rather get Kenyon Martin Jr. over a Danny Green. Same thing kind of with Doug McDermott. Very streaky player. He's got some nice highs, but these 11s and these kind of pop up a 9 every now and then. But he's playing good. In his last 3 games, he's been hot. So he's on a little scoring streak right now. So I like him quite a bit. But Danny Green, Doug McDermott, even Alec Burks, these guys are more guys that I like to add for like a night, or if they have 2 games in a row, I'll kind of add those guys for 2 games. Alec Burks playing well. But here's a really important player for you guys. Aleksej Pokusevsky. I don't know how to say it. Pokusevsky. I don't know. One of those 2. But he's been getting a lot of minutes for Oklahoma City Thunder, 39, 30, and 30. Scoring is up. He had an okay game against the Knicks, but 12.75 points, but it's sandwiched between a 4.3 and a 31.5. So he's a really active scorer and rebounder. Pretty good on the defense end with the blocks here. I believe he's a 7-footer too, so we'll see if he gets more minutes as the season goes on. But under 6% owned, he's seen a 5.4% spike over the last 7 days, so he's a hot add right now. And he's a guy worth just adding and seeing where it goes the rest of the week. So I like him quite a bit. You got Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Noel, Matisse Thybulle, Svi Mahalik here, who's hasn't debuted with Oklahoma City Thunder yet, but maybe tomorrow night. We'll see what happens here. So I'm kind of checking. We'll keep an eye on him. But that's pretty much it for the watch list. I did say we'll go check out Tony Bradley real quick, because Tony Bradley he's going to be the starter for Joel Embiid, and then you're going to see Dwight Howard kind of come in. So I would expect somewhere around these 20 minutes per game. On the games where Joel Embiid has not played, you do see Tony Bradley get somewhere 20, 22 minutes. He's a pretty productive player. So I think going forward, he's probably a guy that needs to be added. Maybe you just watch him and see what happens tonight or tomorrow night, whenever they play next. Looks like tomorrow night they play against the Knicks. So I'm kind of interested in Tony Bradley, but there's a handful of guys here on the watch list that I think can help you out a little bit more. So that's going to do it for tonight's video. Again, check out the Lakers. Otherwise, you got a bunch of teams with 4 games the rest of the way. So I hope that helped. If you liked the video, don't forget to like the video, down there in the thumbs up, and then leave a comment if you have questions, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. We'll see you guys in another video. Peace.